All right, let's talk Dallas Cowboys. I'm Nick, and this is our daily Cowboys show. A lot of stuff to get into, as always, when it comes to the Cowboys. But first, we like to start with a little palate cleanser with our little stat of the day, little chart of the day. So let's pull it up for you guys. Sort of an interesting data that I saw on social media this morning, courtesy of the Cowboys Muse account. It listed, as you can see on the screen there, players with 200 plus passing touchdowns and 66.5 plus completion percentage since 2016. Dak Prescott and Patrick Mahomes. That's obviously, for Prescott's sake, a good list to be a part of, just him and Mahomes. Mahomes obviously being the generational quarterback of this era. And you can look at other guys that could potentially qualify that weren't on this list. You look at, of course, Jared Goff, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. Even though he retired after the 2022 season, that would have been, 7 seasons? He could have easily gotten to that 200 plus touchdown mark. But it's only him in terms of Prescott and Patrick Mahomes on this list. And I think this is really important to focus on. I know a lot of people really trash Prescott, certainly in social media and the big sports media all the time, Fox Sports, ESPN, and even sometimes Cowboys fans do as well. And I'm not saying Dak is as good as Patrick Mahomes. He's clearly not, both in resume, talent, and overall performance, but he's a lot better than people think. He's a lot more consistent, a lot more productive. Remember, he's got these numbers after missing significant time in 2020 and 2024. There's a lot of other quarterbacks that have dealt with injuries, dealt with some problems, and they don't have these numbers. So this is an elite group of just two, obviously Prescott and Mahomes, that Dak is in. I think this is another data point to focus on when people want to hate on Dak, is that he is not elite. I'm not saying he's the best quarterback in football. I think it's obvious he's not, but he's a lot better than people want to give him credit for it. And I think with the right infrastructure, offense and defense, he can certainly take this Cowboys team to the Super Bowl championship. Now, obviously, they need the right infrastructure, and we'll get to everything going on with that and the issues potentially in Dallas with that. But in Prescott alone, is he, Mahomes? Is he Burrow? Is he Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson? No. But he's just as good or better, in my opinion, than a guy like Jalen Hurts, who's won a title. So why can't Prescott do it? The numbers support it. All right, let's get into the news and the stories of the day. This first one is courtesy of Patrick Walker at Voice of the Star on X. He posted, I asked Brian Schottenheimer what stands out most about Jay Toia in first-team snaps and what kind of impact might the rookie make as early as year one. Turns out Cooper Beebe had some words for Shotty. We're talking about Jay Toia, young defensive tackle, nose guard, zero technique. Zero technique is a head up on the center, one technique on the outside shoulder of the center, for anyone who isn't familiar with that terminology. Toia got some first-string reps, kind of a little bit of a surprise this early in camp, but he's doing some good things. And if you listen to what Cooper Beebe said, let me pull this up on the screen for you here. Beebe said, talking about the young rookie, the size and the pad level he's playing with. Whew. I was talking to Cooper Beebe. I'm sorry, Schottenheimer was saying this. And I was talking to Cooper Beebe, and a couple of times Jay got on Coop's right hand, his snap hand, and he was like, that's a large man shooting the gap. It's impressive, talented guy. When you have a guy that size that can penetrate and be disruptive, it was funny to hear Cooper talk about it. He felt him like, whoo, that's tough. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that can happen. We've seen this happen in years past with Dallas. You go back to Jay Ratliff a number of years ago. I think, almost 20 years ago at this point, maybe 20 years ago. A late-round selection. I believe he was a seventh-round pick. Interior defensive lineman. Obviously very different stylistically than Toia, but sometimes you get these late-round guys that kind of emerge that are really good at like one or two things. If Toia was a very good, let's say, pass rusher or hyper-athletic, he would not have been available at the end of the draft. But he's very good and was very good in college about stuffing the run, being disruptive, and we're seeing a lot of reports about that out of Cowboys camp. We saw it yesterday in the media. We're seeing it with Schottenheimer, and now Cooper Beebe saying similar kind of things as well. To a man, player, coach, media, everyone is impressed with this rookie. Again, all that matters when it comes to Toia is disruptive playmaking in terms of stopping the run. The Cowboys have the pass rushers. They have the secondary, certainly when healthy. They've got, I will say, when they get healthier, a good enough linebacking core until Overshown returns. So there's some question marks, but I think they got some good pieces. I think they're good enough overall at a linebacking group. But they need to stop the run. They need to have forces inside that can stop the run. Mozzie Smith, up to this point, ain't been it, and there are reports out of camp that he's not going to be it. I personally think he's on his way out as a Dallas Cowboy. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he turns it around and does great things. But I think they clearly need an interior run stuffer. It's obvious. Everyone's been looking for some quality player. They're giving Toia the opportunities. They're giving him some reps, and he's impressing everyone. This is obviously a great sign for the Dallas Cowboys because their clear and obvious weakness on this entire team is run stuffing, run stopping, and having a good nose tackle, good one technique in the middle of the defense to handle that is absolutely absolutely what they need. And it goes back to the prior stat, right? The infrastructure around Prescott. Does he have enough pieces around him? Well, we know on offense he's got great playmakers with Lamb and Pickens, Ferguson expecting to bounce back after a disappointing year last year. The running back room, Jadon Blue doing some good things. It looks like it's going to be a little bit better this year. Offensive line dealing with some injuries, but Booker into the fold, BB in the year 2 leap, right? We're going to see some good things there. Hopefully, we expect some good things. And then you shift over to defense. Pass rushers are elite. Cornerbacks have some issues because of injuries, but when healthy, they're very good. Linebacking core, very similar. Safety's a veteran group, right? They've got special teams very good. The infrastructure is there. All the pieces are there when it comes to this Cowboys team to give Dak Prescott offensively and defensively the team he needs to make a run at a Super Bowl title. The biggest question, the biggest impediment was run defense. Can they stop the run? And if Toia can emerge as a quality run defender and just get this Cowboys run defense, and we talked about this yesterday, to go from terrible to just, average, that is enough, right? They don't need to be elite. We'll take elite, obviously, but if they're just competent, if they're just okay, if they're not just god-awful at stopping the run, that is a huge leap forward for the Dallas Cowboys. That's why it's so good to see everyone, literally everyone's been impressed with Jay Toia, excited to see what he does the rest of camp and preseason. Could be, I know Ezra Rocco's looking great, of course, Booker, and you look at Revel as a corner that could develop into somebody, Jadon Blue. But if you look at the most impactful rookie of this entire class, if Toia can be a quality run stuffer, he will be the guy at the top of the list. That's how valuable this could end up being for Dallas. Definitely something to keep an eye on. All right, moving right along, we got from Kyle Yauman some just Cowboys notes from practice yesterday. We'll just dig through these really quickly. Dak was dicing up the defense today. Pickens, Lamb, Turpin, Holden, Cropper, all with really good days in the passing game. Yeah, we talked about that as a second ago. The infrastructure is there. And I talked about it yesterday. The skill group in Dallas is championship caliber. CeeDee Lamb is one of the best 3 receivers in football, right? I personally would put him right behind Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. I'm not hating on Lamb. I just think those 2 guys are better. But CeeDee Lamb's in that same group. Those guys just edge him out a little bit. Pickens is a Pro Bowl All-Pro guy. Ferguson can be a Pro Bowl All-Pro guy. Good tight end room behind him. I like Brevin Spanford. I think he's going to be a key piece going forward. Jadon Blue emerging as a playmaking running back. Hunter Lipke is kind of an underrated fullback receiver type to do some things. Kavontae Turpin is like a weapon X. You got Tolbert and Mingo duking it out for like a battle for wide receiver 3. That's going to be really important. But the important thing just holistically is the Cowboys have a skill group that's championship caliber. And we're starting to see that show up in camp as they get the timing down, as they get the rhythm down. Next point there is Turpin wide receiver 3. And no, he's weapon X, right? He does a little bit of everything. I think he's not a guy you want to have a traditional role in an offense. I don't think the Cowboys plan for that. Everything Schottenheimer has said and done with Turpin is, hey, we're going to find opportunities for him, whether he's lined up as a running back in the slot, out wide in motion, obviously returning kicks. They just want to get him the football as many ways as they can. Certainly not in like a traditional wide receiver 3 position. So the answer to this is obviously no. Another step forward for the starting O-line. Well, anytime the quarterback has a good day, got to give the big guys up front a lot of credit, which they had a good day, even with the injuries, of course. D-line was better against O-line depth. Well, yeah, when you have injuries on the offensive line, when you're down a starter, Guyton, your backup tackle has to play, and suddenly your second string tackle, suddenly your third tackle has to be your second string guy, and so you start running into depth issues. That's what happens with injuries, whether in camp or the regular season. So I'm not surprised at all to see the second team defense do really good against the second team offense, because we basically have a lot of third teamers now, because again, Jones is hurt, the backup guard, and of course with Guyton hurt, you've got the backup tackle moving up to the starting left tackle. You've got a lot of third team guys playing a lot of second string reps on offense against a second string defense. Would expect the D-line to dominate that situation. One-on-one drills were fun for the offense. Yeah, I mean, one-on-ones in training camp and practice in general, whether pass rush or receiver against corner, those are, great social media clips, and they're good technique things to work on. I always hated those drills. So I was an offensive lineman in college years ago. We would do one-on-one pass rush, and I always thought it was the stupidest drill in the world, because the biggest advantage you have, or really the 2 biggest advantages you have as an offensive lineman, is 1, you know the play, and 2, you know the snap count. And one-on-one pass rush, you essentially get rid of both of those advantages. The other advantage you have as an offensive lineman that people forget is that you've got guys all around you, right? If you're a tackle, which I was, you've got guards inside of you. So if the defensive end tries to rush inside, you can kind of pin him down against the guard or another pass rusher and just stop all the momentum right there. In one-on-one pass rush, those things aren't there, right? It's sort of an illusion. It's sort of a fugazi drill, so heavily weighted toward the defense. So the fact that the offense looks good in those kind of drills, I'm sorry, the defense looks good in those kind of drills. One-on-ones, receiver on cornerback, it's usually the opposite, right? Because the cornerbacks usually have help. They have a pass rush. They have safety help. One-on-one, if they're covering a wide receiver, that's a nightmare scenario. And especially if there's no pass rush, the only time a corner is going to be true one-on-one on a wide receiver in a game where everyone knows it's a passing situation is if the defense is calling like an all-out blitz. And in that case, the quarterback's going to get rid of the ball extremely quickly. So in that situation, you see, wow, the offense looks good in one-on-ones against the defensive secondary. That's, again, a little bit of fugazi. It's not a real situation. It's fun social media, but it's not indicative of anything that matters. Linebackers remain active in coverage. Makes sense. Flus is a linebackers guy. He's going to use them a lot in a bunch of different ways. Tyler Smith left practice for knee soreness. It seems to be fine. Some tendonitis, just training camp stuff. We'll see how it shakes out over a couple days, but he said he's fine. Cowboys say he's fine. No concerns there. Again, don't want to just push it, right, which is the smart move to make. Hoffman and Bass rotating at guard for Smith. Yeah, makes sense. You're trying to figure out who your backup guard is and figure out who's going to slide in. Both Bass and Hoffman are quality backups. I prefer Hoffman. I like his mentality, but getting them both good reps with the first string I think is nice. Milton's arm is impressive, but still need to read his progression quicker. Yeah, I always wondered how as a reporter you can evaluate a progression, right? So, I'm not going to be critical of Milton here. I don't know how Yamans can know the progression watching the stuff from the sideline, watching from the stands. I mean, you don't know the play call, you don't know the scheme, you don't know the protection. We know Milton has a good arm, no question there. So I'd be a little hesitant to grade Milton harshly. Let's see how he looks in a game environment where, it's a little bit more indicative of what he might face when it comes down to playing in the regular season. If we don't hope it happens, if Prescott gets hurt, but if it does happen, let's wait till he does in the preseason. Let's see how he handles that. And then finally, better day stopping the run for defense, just not the pass. Yeah, maybe that's Toia, right? I mean, and if Toia getting reps, just maybe that emboldens Mozzie Smith, a little competitive juice. Who knows? But I think definitely there is a Toia effect going on, like we mentioned earlier in this video. Definitely someone to keep an eye on. The more I hear about this rookie, the more I'm impressed. Everyone's impressed with the young guy there at defensive tackle. All right, moving on. This is courtesy of Todd Archer, great reporter, Cowboys insider for ESPN. He posted on X. You should follow Todd Archer, by the way. Really good. Highly recommend him. Dak Prescott rehabbed with Nate Thomas in the offseason, and came away impressed and told him, Nate, you can play. He said he's poured into Thomas, not knowing he would be needed at left tackle with Tyler Guyton out for a while, but Prescott believes Thomas will be fine. Yeah, it's very interesting. The Nate Thomas story just continues to build legs, right? Schottenheimer, before training camp, said we really like this kid. We've seen a lot of people, other people, the Joneses, the front office, say we really like what he's done. We're seeing assistant coaches. Now Prescott, Nate Thomas, and I know I said this like 5,000 times, but I'm going to keep reiterating it. Coming out of school last year, a 7th-round selection for the Cowboys, when you break down his data, he looked like a big-time steal. He compared very favorably to some 2nd- and 3rd-round selections that went on to start and be quality backups for their teams. We're talking at the time, the Houston Texans with Blake Fisher, the Baltimore Ravens with Rosengarten, and the Raiders with DJ Glaze. And Nate Thomas's college stats, based on the analytics scoring to PFF, were just as good, if not better, than those guys. So he looked like a big steal last season. The injuries kept him out. Now he's coming into this season, full off season, rehab completely in a good spot, work with Prescott. He's building confidence, and he's got confidence in his teammates. A lot of people were worried about Guyton and what's going to happen if that was a serious injury. This is something to keep an eye on over the course of preseason and maybe week 1, 2, if Thomas is the starter. Could there be a massive steal emerging, a special player that no one saw coming in Dallas? Stranger things have happened. Let's keep an eye on Nate Thomas. All right, continue to work through these stories. This is courtesy of Gavin Dawson. I haven't heard or seen much of his reporting on X, but he posted this, and then a bunch of other insiders posted it much later, so I'm going to give him credit, so I saw it first. He posted, Savon Revel's dad just told us on the show it's looking like another 6 to 8 weeks for him to come back from the knee. Also clarifying the pronunciation is Savon. So, okay, Savon Revel. Okay, so I've screwed that up about 10,000 times, so thank you, Savon Revel's dad and Gavin Dawson for correcting people like me who kept mispronouncing his name. Yeah, and I mean, this is one of the issues. The cavalry is coming for the Dallas secondary. We all get that. We all understand that. So let's look at 8 weeks. Let's do worst case scenario. It's August 1st now. So if we go ahead, we're talking at that point, it would be October 1st, right? So not too late into the season, 4 games in, 5 games in, whatever ends up being. Trayvon Diggs will be back by then as well. So you can look at this secondary and say, at that point, you have Deron Bland, you have Kaiir Elam, you have Revel, you have Diggs, and suddenly you look at the secondary and you're like, that's a really good group. And then you throw in guys that will have gotten some good playing time and good experience, like maybe Troy Pride, maybe Keemon Hall, and suddenly you say that's a very deep cornerback room with a lot of guys with a lot of experience. That's a really, really good group, at least least on paper. The question is, what's September going to be like, right? And that's the big question mark for Dallas. And one of the things I will say my biggest concern was Deron Bland, of course, had an injury in camp last year. It was supposed to be like 6 weeks, ended up being like 12. That was such a weird situation. Diggs with his injury things. Right now with Cowboys injuries, especially at that position, I'm a little hesitant to say, hey, I think this is going to be fine. The timeline makes sense. But to be fair, this isn't the Cowboys saying this. This is Revel's dad. So we could at least take a look and say, okay, well, he knows probably just as good as anybody from an honest perspective. So if Revel can return full go by October, that's awesome. Great depth piece, special teams improvement. Get him into the fold. By then, Diggs and Bland will be involved. Kyer Elam will be a key piece to that. Hall, Troy Pride. At that point, we're looking at a defensive unit. Even Kalen Carson, the second-year man, would be back by then. We're looking at a very deep cornerback room with a lot of top-flight talent. It's just waiting for those reinforcements to arrive. As long as more injuries don't happen, I think they'll be okay. September, will be rough for the secondary, at least the cornerback room. If they can power through that and just survive, I think they'll be in good shape the rest of the season. All right, this next post here, I had to take just like a clip of it just because it was kind of a long picture in text. This is courtesy of Clarence Hill Jr. Cowboys coach Brian Schottenheimer on the team's historic lack of discipline and why he has no patience for fighting in practice. Yeah, so for anyone who's not familiar, Brian Schottenheimer multiple times has yelled at players for fighting, throwing punches, and after a couple of scuffles yesterday's practice, he said, that's it, we're running sprints, and had people whole team run sprints, and said this is totally unacceptable. Schottenheimer said, we've always had a very talented roster, true, and we have one now. I think you can make an argument. It takes discipline to win a world championship, and that's the goal, and that's the objective. Yeah, I think this is phenomenal, and this is what the genius of the Schottenheimer hire, at least to this point, right? I don't want to get ahead of myself and saying it was a great hire, but if you look at the Cowboys' moves, basically in the 21st century at the head coach, it started with Dave Campo, which of course we all know in retrospect, that was clearly a failed attempt to recapture the Jimmy Johnson magic. It was never going to work. That was a bad move. Jones recognized it, of course, 3, 5, and 11 seasons in a row will show that. Then you bring in Bill Parcells, a culture shifter, a disciplinarian, a talent maximizer kind of guy. That's who he was. That's who Bill Parcells always was. And he did good things. He maximized talents, turned the franchise around. But then after that, the Cowboys went through a succession of 3 coaches where it was the exact opposite. You had a guy in Wade Phillips who didn't maximize talent. The team underperformed. Jason Garrett they brought in and said, okay, well, maybe we need an offensive mind, a younger guy. Wade Phillips was just too old and maybe too much defense. Bring in Jason Garrett, younger guy, offensive mind, former quarterback. The Joneses obviously loved him. Former Cowboy, all these things you love. But again, they underperformed time and time again based on their talent. Okay, well, that didn't work. Maybe we need an established head coach. We still want to be an offensive guy. We still want to be a guy focused on that side of the football, but we don't want a guy that's never been a head coach before. We want a guy that's won a title. We need to win a champion. We need someone with championship experience. So what do? They bring in Mike McCarthy. And there was some results. They won a lot of games, like Garrett won a lot of games. Wade Phillips won a lot of games. But they never lived up to their talent, right? The Bill Parcells era teams from 2003 through 2006, I always felt lived up to their talent level. 2006 may be the only exception, but that was because of that disappointing finish to the season and then the Romo drop snap. But if you look at 2003, they were a bad team that won 10 games and went to the playoffs. 2004, they were still not a good team. Obviously, they went 6-10. And 2005, they were figuring things out slowly in a rebuild. That was like rookie years for like DeMarcus Ware and guys like that. I think Marion Barber as well. So that was a team that was Jason Witten's third year, for example. That was a young team trying to figure things out. And 2006 was the first year of Romo, the first year of T.O. Like they were figuring things out there as well. And then, of course, we saw what happened in 2007. They went 13-3. But again, lost in the divisional round. Wade Phillips not living up to the talent. I think the Schottenheimer hire is sort of a reset. It's back to the Parcells. We got to figure out a way to instill the culture and live up to their talent. And that's exactly what Schottenheimer's saying. He's being very honest about it. And I think the best way to solve a problem, or at least the first step, is to be open about it. Say, listen, we've got talented guys. We've got a good quarterback. I showed the stats to start the show. We know CeeDee Lamb's great. We know Micah Parsons is great. We know Tyler Smith is great. We know Pickens is great. We know Ferguson can be really good. We know Diggs and Bland can be really good, right? We know Overshown will be great when he's healthy. We know Osodigizu is great, right? Ezeraku looks good. Booker looks good, right? Jadon Blue looks good, right? You go across the board here and you say, hey, there's a lot of good players here, a lot of good pieces here, right? And then, Kevontae Turpin's one of the best special teams players in football, and he's a weapon X kind of guy on offense. Got the best kicker in the game, right? There's so many great players on this roster, a lot of talent. The question is, and even when there aren't talented guys, there's first round high potential guys like Guyton, for example. So even with all of that being said, It's about culture. It's about living up to your talent. And that was one of the geniuses of Bill Parcells. And Bill Belichick was the same way. They squeezed, and Andy Reid in Kansas City, same thing. Like, you look at the Chiefs on paper, they were not nearly as good as some of the other teams, but they keep going to Super Bowl after Super Bowl. Why? Talent maximization. Part of that is quarterback play, but part of that is having a coach that instills the culture and the discipline to maximize talent. That's what Schottenheimer's doing. He's all about getting the most out of his players as physically possible. And I think that's what he's trying to set the tone now. It's not about fighting. It's not about being feisty. Like, Jason Garrett was always about that. Remember the fight slogan? And that was cool and that's fun if you're like an underdog, right? That was sort of Dean Campbell when he took over the Detroit Lions a few years ago. It was all about biting kneecaps. And that's a great mentality to be physical and nasty when you're the underdog, when you don't have talent. But when you become a talented football team, the mindset needs to shift. Then it's about execution. And we've seen the Detroit Lions in the postseason back-to-back years, super talented roster, top 3, top 4 talent in the National Football League. And we've seen them lose. They got just devastated at home by Washington. And then, of course, they blew that lead against San Francisco the year before because of dumb mistakes, lack of discipline, players not living up to their capabilities. That hurt the Lions the last 2 seasons. And that's what teams have to do. You have to shift from being a culture guy to a guy to, you have to shift from being like a feisty guy like Dan Campbell at the beginning, Jason Garrett during his time with Dallas, to an actually execution team when you have the talent. The Cowboys have always had the talent. They don't need to be feisty a lot of times. They just need to be an execution-minded team, a discipline-minded team. Love the idea that Brian Schottenheimer is imposing that and directly imposing that. Clear as day. He's undeniable, unshakable about this. He's consistent too. He wants no penalties. He wants people living up to their talent. Love this from the head coach. Much more Bill Parcells and much more, to be totally honest, Marty Schottenheimer. Schottenheimer's father, Marty, the great Marty Schottenheimer, very similar mindset. Love to see that getting into the Cowboys now for the first time since 2006. All right, last little story here. It doesn't directly involve the Dallas, but I thought it was worthwhile bringing up. And this is that the Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin has requested a trade per multiple reports. All right, why does this matter? Okay, so a lot of people in the media have been very critical of the Cowboys with the Micah Parsons drama and contract overhang. And we'll get to that in just a second. There's some rumors speculating overnight. But let's be very realistic here. This is not uncommon. This is not a Cowboys-only thing. Terry McLaurin was the face of Washington for like 7-8 years when they were bad. They get good. He's a great player, phenomenal player. Wish he played for Dallas. That's how good he was. But they don't want to give him money. They don't want to pay him. So now he's requesting a trade, right? This is Washington. They're on the upswing. They're good vibes all around. Dan Quinn doing a great job. New ownership group. Everyone is so happy. Washington is. They're going to host the draft event in a year or two. Nothing but juice behind that franchise. And the star player, the face of the franchise before Jane Daniels arrived, wants out. I want to trade. I'm gone. Contract dispute. This is common in the NFL. Trey Hendrickson, very famous Cincinnati Bengal, similar thing. TJ Watt for Pittsburgh was complaining about the exact same thing, right? This is common in the NFL, guys. I know it's easy if you're a Cowboys fan only and you look at Parsons and you just say, oh, this is a disaster. And because it's the Cowboys, it's all over the media. These kind of contract disputes, these kind of things, they get ugly all the time. They get ugly every single season, and eventually they get resolved, right? Kobe Bryant wanted to get traded in like 2006, 2007 from Los Angeles. He retired a Laker like 13 years later, whatever it was, 11, 12 years later, right? Again, this happens all the time in sports, happens all the time in football. Let this play out. Now, I will say this. There are some rumors about Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs. Diggs specifically not happening with Dallas. If you look at social media posts and try and read between the lines, I don't try and get into that too much, but there's a rumor going around that Diggs feels like it's his last season with Dallas. It probably is if he doesn't step up, and they'll probably cut him and save money. I'm being totally honest here. But if you look at the secondary, if you have DeRon Bland, if you got Revel that's ready to step up, do you need Diggs, right? At a certain point, how expensive he is with the injury concerns, if he's not hyper-productive, if he's not 2021, 2022 Trayvon Diggs, it makes sense. But there's a lot of people that look at that, and they look at Parsons. There's rumors that Parsons doesn't like that, and of course his contract situation. And the reality is, just to hit on this point before I get into responding to comments and questions, is that the Cowboys structurally right now, with the franchise tag options they have for the next 2 years, and Prescott and Parsons camp knows this, the Cowboys, by playing out Parsons this year and then franchising him in 2026 and in 2027, basically get him to a 3-year deal worth about $31-ish million on average, right? Give or take a little bit based on projections. It could be a couple million either way. What does that mean? It means the Cowboys could essentially, if they wanted to, keep Parsons below market value all the way until 2028. And they know that. And Parsons' camp knows that too. So the question is from Micah Parsons, what do you have more to lose? Would you rather be 30% under market for 3 years or 5% under market now? And everyone knows that. Jerry Jones holds all the cards. Stephen Jones holds all the cards. The Cowboys hold all the cards. And I understand the frustration from the Parsons camp. But that's just the reality of the situation. And look, if you want to go somewhere else, you're going to have to give up. You're going to have to find a team, because the Cowboys will tag you, that is willing to give up 2 first-round picks and whatever else for Micah Parsons. And I guess Dallas will probably take that at some point, to be totally honest. If some team, and it'll probably be more than that. It'll probably be 2 firsts, a second, like a fourth. No team's going to do that, to be totally honest, because teams don't give that up for quarterbacks very rarely. Teams that do, like the Cleveland Browns, that ends up working up in total disaster. The Cowboys hold all the cards. Parsons knows that. Now, he's pissed. He doesn't like that. That's just the truth. Now, you can argue whether the Cowboys handling it is right or wrong. That's a completely different debate. But it's clear the Cowboys hold all the cards, just like Washington holds the cards with Terry McLaurin. These things get ugly. These things get disappointing. They get a lot of attention in the media. And I understand. Des Bryant came out recently and he said, listen, I hate the fact that it ruins a player's mindset because they feel like they're not being taken care of. They feel like they're being taken advantage of. And I understand that you may think that as a player, and I'm an NFL player, so I can't be in your shoes. But I'm going to be totally honest. If the choice was between me making $20 million versus me making $30 million a year, that's just me personally here, I would not feel like I wasn't taken advantage of. I've never made even remotely close to that kind of money. Not even close. Like, that's just like not real to me. And that's not real to 99.9% of Americans, to be totally honest. So it's not very sympathetic to say, listen, as a professional athlete making a lot of money, an incredible lot of money, I think it's more important for me to make $40 million a year than 35. That's a hard sell. And I think Jones knows that, and the ownership knows that. The leadership of every team knows that. And they may not like it. It's a business. It's tough. Negotiations are brutal. But the reality is, and just the case with McLaurin, just the case with Hendrickson in Cincinnati, and Parsons in Dallas, the ownership group holds all the cards. Now, I say all this, by the time I post this video, there could be a massive extension announced for Micah Parsons. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just, while I'm talking to you right now, just go on and search it just to make sure something didn't happen literally while I was talking to you, because that would be just a total, reputation of everything I just said. Nothing that I can see yet. It doesn't mean it won't happen momentarily. But right now, we just have to let this play out. It's ugly. These things happen. It's just part of the game. All right, let's get into some of the comments from yesterday's video. A lot of good ones here. This is according to @user PK8UF3R7V. He posted, our edge rushers seem good this year, but I'm still worried about interior D-line. Me too. I don't like the X's and I don't know the X's and O's a whole lot, but correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like Flus is going for a pass rush heavy defense. Sort of. Flus is a linebacker guy, and he's a guy that's all about creating opportunities for his linebackers. That's sort of his whole mindset. Now, it doesn't mean he's not going to rush the passer. There's been a lot of reports out of camp that he's heavy blitzing, but I think you deal the hand, you have to play the hand you're dealt. The Cowboys are a great pass rushing team, and that's the strength of their team with Parsons, Oso Digizua, and of course you add Azaraku and Fowler, the 2 additions this offseason. Even guys like Williams, right, were good pass rushers. So even before their offseason additions, they were a pass rush heavy, pass rush oriented defense. So you got to play their hand you're dealt. Now, Eberflus, also being a linebacker guy, tries to figure out situations for his linebackers to be sort of the middle ground of the defense, to cover up the gaps. And right now, I think it looks like they're going to probably rely on the young guy, Toia, to just eat up space and see if their linebackers can roll between the tackles and make some plays and limit damage in the running game. That's kind of the approach right now, the way I'm seeing it. Now, they're going to be hyper-aggressive on the other side of that, because if you have linebackers making tackles and being your primary run defenders, it's usually 3-4 yards downfield. So it's going to be a lot of 2nd and 6s, 2nd and 4s, 2nd and 7s, 2nd and 5s for offenses against Dallas, which means there's going to be a lot of 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 5s, things like that, which is hard to stop consistently. So how do you mitigate that? You create negative plays. You create sacks, turnovers, things like that. There's been a hyper-focus on takeaways, a hyper-focus on blitzing. You create negative plays by the Cowboys in camp. So I think that's a strategy right now from Flus, is to use a hyper-aggressive scheme to create negative plays, and on 1st and 10 kind of situations, rely on your linebackers to just make tackles and get it to 2nd and 5. Don't give up a 9-yard run and make it 2nd and 1. Make it 2nd and 5, and then hopefully on 2nd and 5 we can come up with a negative play to get to 3rd and 7, and then let our pass rushers loose. That's basically the strategy as it currently sits right now for the Cowboys, at least the way I see it. DeCarlo Lopez, 5661 posted, Maz, it was exciting when you were drafted, but the ship has unfortunately sailed. Good luck. There's a job out there, but we need to run stuffer at the 1. Talk about the 1 technique. Yeah, 100% agree. Polo 8105, Mozzie's not getting cut. Dallas won't cut a 1st round. That's not the Cowboys. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could make the argument from a cap situation and experience situation, it's not worth cutting him during the training camp, but I wouldn't be surprised. But I do agree you make a good point in terms of depth, right? Hey, listen, is it worth just having him as a backup? Worst case scenario, if Toya's the guy, I could make an argument there. That wouldn't be the worst situation in the world. Um, this is from at Monte Murdoch 5032. He posted, Nick, I've always wanted to know at this level of professional football, how much percentage wise is the mental aspect of playing versus the physical? To me, the player pretty much has all the physical tools, so I would say mental toughness takes it for the grind. Is at 90% for that player to be a success? What are your thoughts, especially again as an actual former player? Well, I was a former collegiate player and I was not very good in college. I always like to throw that caveat in there. So, don't expect any highlight films of me. There were none. I was a bench warmer in college. But I will say this, the context of these players it's an interesting question. It's a good question. I will say people don't understand the freakish level of athleticism these human beings have. You can't comprehend it. So I don't know if you guys remember or not. A defensive tackle was out of Alabama. This was years and years ago. Went to play for the Baltimore Ravens. Terrence Cody, Mount Cody was his nickname. About 5'10" dude, about 350 pounds. Like just massive, just huge block of a man. Big, strong, powerful. Like bench 400, squat 600. Huge dude, right? I saw him one time, just as luck would have it. There was a local workout facility where I went to high school, or at least in the region, and they would do like charity things for like local high schools, and I just so happened to be there at the same time he was there doing some training. Right, it was just one of those weird coincidences. And he was there, and he was just like, it was in between workouts or something. He was playing pickup basketball with somebody, and he went to Alabama, and that was reasonably close to where this facility was. And he was just playing basketball. I just remember he's just kind of screwing around playing basketball, and he like does a little crossover move, just elevates one-handed tomahawk slams. And I just remember looking at this, and I'm like, this dude is 5'10", 360 pounds. And he just elevated in one-handed dunk like the star player on my high school basketball team. Wouldn't that be that athletic? This is a nose guard in the NFL, and this is what he looks like. This is what he can do. And that just blew my mind. And I've seen other instances with other NFL guys just over the course of my career where you're like, yeah, they're different. They're bigger, faster, stronger, more explosive than anything you can possibly imagine. Even the offensive linemen are faster than 99% of people, these professional offensive linemen. That's how freakishly amazing these athletes are. I don't think we kind of understand, because when you watch the game live, whether in the stadium or on broadcast, it gets a little lost because of the distance. But man, oh man, are these guys fast, physical, explosive. It's at another level. So I would actually say most of it, believe it or not, is physical. The mental side is almost the tiebreaker, right? It's what pushes you over the top. Because if you look at, for example, let's use the famous Tom Brady 6th-round pick example, pick number 199. He did not have a lot of physical tools, but he still was, people said, oh, he didn't have a lot of physical tools, but he was also 6'4", 220 pounds, and had a great arm, right? That's like 199th percentile in terms of skill sets, right? He was drafted to play baseball professionally. So this notion that Brady was like a bad athlete is false. He was a professional level athlete. His athletic skills weren't good compared to like Michael Vick, right? Which is like, again, when I talk about freak athletes, that's what you're dealing with here. But Brady's tie-breaking advantage, and again, the margin between Hall of Fame first ballot and bench warmer in the NFL isn't a lot, guys. That's where the mental side comes in. So just to kind of put a wrap on this, that mental side, that mental toughness, that's the tiebreaker. But the freakish athleticism, that's how you get there. Micah Parsons is who he is because he's a freak athlete, and that mental toughness puts him into quality player to elite, right? That's how it works. Dak Prescott's a great athlete and a great passer of the football, but his mental toughness and intelligence pushes him to that next level. So that's how I would quantify him. It's not really a direct answer to your question, but it's a really good question, and it's not an easy one to answer. But I really think, just to put a bow on that, the physical greatness of these athletes is something to behold. If you don't see it in person, what these guys can do, you should at some point, because it's absolutely incredible. Monte Murdoch 5032 later asked in the video, maybe a silly question to you, but why is it called Saturday Morning Inspection? You come out daily with these. Yeah, it's an interesting question. So Saturday Morning Inspection is the name of the company. It's the name of the brand. Me and my college roommate started this, and it's just a play on where we went to school. And we started it originally as a weekly show coming out Saturday morning before the weekend, and we've expanded into a bunch of different ways. So we have the SMI Cowboy Show, the Saturday Morning Inspection Cowboy Show. That's what I do, of course. Sometimes my co-host joins me for deep dives and things like that. But we also have a flagship NFL channel we call Saturday Morning Inspection. We also have our college channel, which we call the SMI College Football Show. So Saturday Morning Inspection is just the brand, it's the company. And the SMI Cowboy Show, again, Saturday Morning Inspection Cowboy Show, that's just part of it. So that's how it just breaks out from that perspective. Uh, this is from JWSB 482. Marinelli used undersized, quick defensive tackles. So did other DCs. It's a linebacker-based defense. Exactly, 100%. I said something similar about the fact they're going to be about using the linebackers to fill those holes in terms of making those plays, get to 2nd and 6, and then use some quick, fast guys, the Osu Odighizuwas, and of course the edge defenders to create negative plays, get to 3rd and long. That seems to be the strategy. Agree with you 100%. Mary I 9549 posted, Mozzie just doesn't have the will to play in the NFL. He peaked in college, period. I don't want to grade and evaluate. I can't read his mind. I can't see what's in his heart, right? So I'm not going to be one to say, well, he just doesn't have the will to play. He just doesn't have a want to play. He just may not be good enough, right? For whatever reason. And it just happens. Look, there's a lot of good college players and a lot of high draft picks that just aren't good enough. Now, there's some guys that are, they bust out because they get in trouble with the law or they're just bad team guys or whatever. I don't think that's the case with Mozzie Smith, at least from what I know. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. He just may not be good enough. And look, that happens. We've seen guys that weren't good enough across every team every year in the draft. And at least at this point, that's what it looks like for Mozzie Smith. I'm not rooting against him. I'm hoping he turns it around, but it just seems to be the case as it currently sits. Went on to write, Toia is not ready to start in the NFL. I can't believe these coaches can't see it. You're kind of dealt, though. You got to play the cards you're dealt, right? You can't go out and you don't have $50 million to go sign a superstar player. I know people look at Christian Wilkins, but he's a guy coming off a major injury. He hasn't played a lot of football in the last couple of years. There may be some weird locker room things there. So even if you look at Wilkins, is he the fix? I don't necessarily think so. Again, you're looking for a guy, if you look at Fluce's defense, to just give you a little run stuffing so your linebackers can make plays, take up 2 guys, don't get blown off the football. That's really what the Cowboys are looking for right now. That's at least what they're settling for, to allow their linebackers to make plays. And again, I've said this like 5,000 times, and then force some takeaways, get some negative plays with some of their other playmakers on defense. That's what their strategy is right now. Now, whether it's a good one or not, I'll leave that up for debate. But that's clearly what Matt Eberflus is at least going for this moment in time. All right, I think that's all the comments I've got for you guys. Again, if you have any comments or questions, put them below and I'll address them next video. A lot of exciting news. May get some Parsons stuff today. Who knows? Probably not, I would bet. That seems to be something that probably will happen week 1 or right before it, as Jerry Jones likes to do with these kind of deals. But until next time, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection.